Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now I'm going to share my screen. Can you guys see it? That's not what I want to do. Present.
Yes, we
Yeah.
can see it. Yeah.
Beautiful. Awesome. So today we're going to have a very high level conversation about building your financial house because we could actually be here for probably an 8 hour session, but we don't have all that time. So we are going to just cover the four, I would think, the four key pillars to building your financial house. Congratulations on taking the time to join us because one thing with knowledge is that no one can ever take it away from you, and once you have the knowledge you can know what to do and make your next step. And so there's a quote I found that said, an investment in knowledge pays the best interest. And so you'll find out that I am a mortgage broker. So I deal with money and have been for over 20 years now. And I understand the power of getting a return on your investment. So your time that you're spending here tonight won't be in vain. You'll be able to apply even just one nugget to your current financial situation to move you to the next step. And so I am a mom of one 9-year-old son. He is Prince Mateo. I am a daughter, a sister, an aunt, a godmama to 10. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I do several things, but as my primary business is in the mortgage industry. I've been a mortgage broker for over 20 years. I'm a licensed life insurance agent, author, speaker, and overall financial educator. I kind of call myself a legacy coach because anything that I do, it's to help moms really structure their finances so that they can live their legacy today, but also prepare and solidify a legacy for their children in the future. So, how did I get started? It started with me being the eldest of three children. My mom had me at a very young age, and she didn't have any financial knowledge. She wasn't given any financial knowledge. She was thrown into motherhood and just had to hit the ground running and doing whatever she could to make sure that her children were provided for. And so, being the eldest, I had firsthand knowledge, firsthand witness of, how difficult it was to one, not have the financial education, not having college education, had to really just figure it out and do what you had to do in order for your children to be able to be comfortable at the very least. And so for me, I just thought, that's a little bit too strenuous. I didn't want to live life like that. And so I've always had like an entrepreneurial spirit. Didn't know that back then. I mean, I started doing my own little business in her basement at the age of 13 doing hair, but it's because I always wanted to be in control of my money, right? But at the age of 23, I decided it was time for me to fly the coop. And what I didn't know was the industry of real estate, right? What I did know was that if I moved and rented somewhere, I would be paying someone else. But if I had left and purchased a property, I would be paying myself. So I had $5,000. I made a decision that I was going to purchase a property, and I did so in Toronto, a 2-bedroom condo at Islington and Finch. And that investment, that little investment, changed my life. Here we are almost 21 years later. My mom is a homeowner because of me, because she didn't think that it was ever possible. I've helped hundreds and hundreds of families over the last few years. But after having my son, of course, my life changed. My perspective of my future had to change. And so my business also shifted as well. And so this is where I formed a community called Mortgages for Moms, where I help to educate and empower moms with the knowledge that they need in order to get into the housing industry. And so, hold on to me. I thought I changed slides. Sorry. I am on a mission to help 1,000 moms nationwide, Canadian based, all provinces, to help them with financial literacy, access to resources and opportunities that will help them begin their homeownership journey. But what I've learned, or what has become very evident to me over the years, is, similar to what both of you said, is that you weren't really given that financial knowledge. And so, yes, I want everyone to buy a house, right? If you can, definitely want to buy yourself a house. But there's a little gap there. You need to understand how money works and what you should be doing with your money a little bit before buying a home, right? Because you can buy a home and that could be the detriment to your financial future if you don't know how to manage your money correctly, correct? So I do focus a lot of my attention on the educational piece of the finance and before getting you into a homeowner, before helping you to become a homeowner. But of course, if you're ready and you have some knowledge, I can definitely help you get a mortgage to get your home as well. So today we're going to be talking about the key pillars to building your financial house. Because yes, again, I want you to buy a house, but I do want you to understand how your money works and what you're doing with it in order for you to not only live for today, but to set yourself up and set your children up for the future. So here's a little interaction. I think you kind of both mentioned it, but where did you learn about money? Bev, you can chime in too. As I know, as I said, for myself, I kind of just wung it. My mom didn't know anything, so she couldn't teach me anything. I just kind of knew the basics, and I've learned through the industry. Anyone want to go first?
I can say that I still haven't learned about money or finances.
Mm-hmm.
That's my issue. And I mean, I am a homeowner. I'm looking to sell my house. I feel completely lost, but I need to sell my house. But what you said was exactly what I was thinking. I have a house in Toronto. I don't want to go from having a house to renting. Because my mortgage is so reasonable that it doesn't make sense financially.
Right.
But in the same token, so I want to sell this house and buy another house.
Okay.
Where do I buy it? How much can I afford? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All of these things went through my head. So this is exactly what I need, because I have zero knowledge about money and finances and all of that. None of it.
Okay, awesome.
I've been paying the mortgage on my own.
Right.
So we've been here for what? I've been paying it for the last 8 years by myself. So being able to pay it steadily without, bouncing, blah, 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 that is not a problem.
Beautiful.
I just don't know how to to accumulate any wealth.
Right.
Yeah. And maybe, sell this one and try and do something to both help my family have a little money and have a new home.
Beautiful. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you for sharing. That was Allison or Cheryl?
That was Cheryl.
Thank you, Cheryl.
This is Allison.
Hi, Allison.
Hey. So for me, we grew up as well. My mom was a single parent after my parents' divorce, and we struggled financially. We struggled. And I didn't want that for myself. Didn't want to be a single parent, but here I am. I got tired of struggling, I think. And I when I moved to Canada, so this is what, 27 years ago, I worked for the bank, and I just started putting away like $25 a paycheck with the aim of I want a house, like I want my own place. So I do now, well, fast forward a few years, got married to the wrong person, ended up losing my first condo, and struggling again, but this time as a single mom. And when I knew that I would be a single mom, the part about legacy, that was important to me, because I'm like, so when I was purchasing my first condo, it was a 3-bedroom, 1,250 square foot condo. And I bought this as a single person.
Right.
And I furnished it because I wanted a daughter. I'm like, okay, this room's going to be for my daughter, and this, that. And so I'm a planner. I plan way in advance. So bought the condo with that intention. My son never saw that condo because, again, marriage didn't work out. So when we were by ourselves, my aim, like I was laser focused on, I have to provide for my son. I have to get him into a place. I've got to do it. I can't be renting. I ended up in some really awful rental situations. One where there was black mold everywhere. The other was I was on the ground floor of an apartment, and the super felt it was okay to tell me how to live my life and come in when I wasn't there.
Oh, wow.
And the mice had a front door access to my place.
Yes.
And so I was like, no, can't do it. So we bought this place that I'm at right now through Options for Homes, not plugging them, but they
Mhm.
used to be geared for single parents when the housing market wasn't as bad as it is.
Right.
Um, so my thing is, and I think a bit like Cheryl, I'm not as like we're not struggling as much as we were,
Mhm.
but I also don't want like to have my son go through college, come out with a whole bunch of debt, um, and me having to second mortgage the house to pay for college for him, or stuff like that. Like these,
Right.
I want to leave a legacy, and I want him to go further than my parents took me. Is basically it. So
Right.
all
Okay.
that to say that.
I hear you. No, I hear you. Again, you guys are not alone. These are, as I said, my own story, but it's something that I hear very, very often. We really were not prepared when it came to money. And I think my next slide. No, let me go back. We weren't taught about money. We're not taught in school. Our parents didn't know, so our parents couldn't give us the proper information. We just know that one, we're supposed to go to school, get a good job, and then kind of just wait for retirement, right? But here we are, Canadians, more than 60% of adults rate their financial knowledge between fair and poor, right? And so that's a true testament as to what's missing from the system, right? They say the richer get richer and the poorer get poorer. The real difference is education, right? And opportunity, of course. And so uh, finances can be very complicated, but again, there's people like me who are here will take the time to break it down and simplify it in order for you to get a better grasp of what you have, because you have to know where you are currently and correct whatever you need to correct before you can even move to the next step. All right. All right. And so the word says, because we have to drop in a word, in Ecclesiastes 10, verse 19, and from the message verse, I like this one. It says, laughter and bread go good together, and wine gives sparkle to life, but it's money that makes the world go round. We need money. We know that, right? But again, there's a science to the money. There's a science to how we use it. There's a science to how we earn it. There's a science to how we save it. There's a science to how we invest it. And without the knowledge, without the education, then we may find ourselves on what they call the rat race, right? But again, most of us were not taught about money, right? The traditional system is you go to school, post-secondary, you get a good job, land a career ideally, and then you retire at 65, right? We know that that is not going to work anymore, right? That traditional system does not work. We can't even rely on the government to ensure that we have pension funds that's going to be able to sustain us, because we see the pensioners right now that are not able to sustain, because you'll see like in the McDonald's and the Walmarts, there's several seniors and they're working, and I'm sure maybe not all, but a large portion of them are working not because they want to, but because they have to.
Yep.
Right? Because they weren't, again, they didn't create a money plan. They didn't set up themselves for retirement, right? You have to leverage the system, because as I said, there's a science and there's a system for everything. And it's not just about going to work and exchanging your time for money, right? So this 3 TGs to wealth, this is something that actually the Lord downloaded in me a few weeks ago. Someone asked me to do a talk, and I was like, okay, Lord, how do you want me to share? And he gave me the 3 Gs to wealth. You've got to gain, you got to give, and you got to learn to grow. Okay? Gain. Have you reached your maximum income potential? Most people are very comfortable being uncomfortable. They have their full-time job or whatever their main source of income is, that really isn't enough, but they juggle everything to try to make it work without thinking outside of the box and figuring out, well, what can I do to earn more? Because most times we don't have, our biggest problem is an income problem. There isn't enough income to cover, right, all of our needs and our wants. And for some people, it's not even enough to cover just our needs, right? So have you reached your maximum income potential? If you are an employee, are you doing what you can to upgrade your skill set? Are you doing what you can to, demand what your value is? Are you doing what you can to even maybe leverage the opportunities within the organization that you're currently with, right? And if there are no longer any opportunities for you to grow financially, maybe it's time to source other opportunities in order to, supplement where their shortfall is, right? So I find a lot of, and this is coming from like conversations that I have with clients. I have a lot more clients that want to buy homes that can actually buy homes, right? They have the ambition, but when the numbers aren't working, it makes it almost impossible. So I do try to stretch their imagination and say, okay, well, if this is where you are right now, what can you do to earn more income, right? Money answereth all things. The more money you have with the knowledge, the more you're able to do what it is you want to do in order to grow your wealth. Give, right? Once we've earned, we know that it doesn't all belong to us. So I'm very, very keen on the principle where we know that we're supposed to give our first tenth to, our Lord and Savior, but also rule number one in the world of money is to pay yourself first, right? So if we know what belongs to the Lord, but our money, we need to pay ourselves first. And so you can determine what that is, if that's 5% of your net pay, if that's 10% of your net pay, right? And we'll talk a little bit later about what you do with that money, but that's supposed to take care of you, right? Take care of you for now and also in the future. So we got to gain, we got to give, and then we got to learn to grow. Money is a currency. It's something that should be continuously moving. And when I say moving, I don't just mean in your account and then out of your account to pay your bills. Your money should be growing, right? And so there's a difference between saving and investing. Having your money invested in vehicles that's going to allow it to grow at a rate that is greater than what, the traditional lenders are willing to offer you is going to be how you're the differentiator between where you are and allowing yourself to attain wealth, right? Your money has to be working for itself more than you're actually working for it. All right, so the 3 G's: gain, give, and grow. And so now we're going to get into the pillars of building your financial house. And you'll see there's 4, and I'm going to go through each of them individually. And so what I want you to think about as you're building a house, every house needs a solid foundation, correct? The foundation of your financial house is your income protection. If you are not able to work to support your family financially, what would happen? What do you have in place that is able to supplement your income in the event that you're not present? And that could mean if you pass away, or even if you were just ill and not able to go to work, or like, the last 2.5 years where the entire world shut down and nobody technically could go to work, right? Do you have something in place to protect your income? Remember, money answers all things, and if there's no income coming in, that's where our financial houses will begin to crumble. All right. And so life insurance, this is my number one conversation with any person that I sit with, because my personal opinion, I am tired of seeing GoFundMe's floating around on Facebook. I don't blame anyone, but I understand it's a lack of knowledge. The importance of having your income protected is vital, especially when we have children. Okay? Especially when we have children. Life insurance protects your most valuable asset, which is your life. we are taught to insure our cars, we're taught to insure our cell phones, we're taught to insure our contents in our home, but we're not ever taught to protect our life, right? And so insurance is very, very key. There's, we can do a whole session on the different types of insurance that is available out there, but it's definitely key. And if you don't understand or know anything, or if you do, it's always good to gain further information, because as life goes on, what you have may not be adequate for what you actually need. Okay? Every adult should have a will in place, right? So having life insurance is the first step, but also having your wishes in writing is the second step. Because if you have, your your finances in order, but something happens to you and you're not able to relay that information to someone, then that could cause unnecessary chaos. So you want to have a will, and what a will really is, it's a directive, right? It tells whomever you've left in charge, whomever is going to be responsible for your children, what you want to do with your assets. And so I know in my culture, the first thing is, I don't need a will, I don't have anything, right? Which is inaccurate information. You do have, right? Whether, even if it's just your clothes, even if it's just, your jewelry, you do still have an estate, even if you don't have a house or a car, anything like that. Because once you pass, the government is going to step in, because they want to ensure that they're taken care of even before your family's taken care of. So having life insurance in place and then also having a will is two key components of the foundation of your financial house. You'll also want to ensure that you're updating your will accordingly. As I said, as life goes on, things change, your asset values can change, your liabilities can change. So you want to make sure that it's very, very current. Some of my clients, they update it monthly, not monthly either, annually. They update their will annually or every couple of years. If you have children, you may have another child, your assets may change. You may buy a bigger house, you may have a smaller house, you want to make sure that it is very, very current. Just like how we make sure that our credit bureaus are current, our wills should also be current as well. Okay? And depending on where you are living, the government has different regulations with respect to a will, but having a will can also expedite the process should, you go and you need your family to be taken care of. All right? Having a will is very, very key. Any questions?
Not yet. No, not for me.
Awesome. Okay. Hi, Cheryl. I see you.
I finally stopped cooking and sat down.
Okay. All right. All right. And so there's a part 2 to the will. You have a will that's going to, give the directive of when you leave, but there's also something called a living will, otherwise known as a power of attorney. In the event that, you become ill and you're unable to make financial decisions for yourself, or, any type of medical decisions for yourself, you'll also want to leave someone in charge, assign someone in charge to do that for you and on your behalf. So having a living will also is very, very key. It records what your wishes are in terms of medical treatment, if you need to be moved anywhere, your assets, things like that. All right. All right. The next pillar is known as the emergency fund, right? I personally don't like the name emergency fund. I feel like I know that our words have power, and I feel if you're planning for an emergency, then you're going to kind of bring on emergencies, but I digress. Proper planning can prevent a lot of stress, all right? And so pre-COVID, it had been said, your emergency fund, which I like to call a contingency fund, should have anywhere between 3 to 6 months of your overall monthly living expenses, right? And so living expenses means everything it costs to be you on a monthly basis, covering your shelter, your food, utilities, anything that you pay for your children on a monthly basis. You should have that times 3 at the very minimum. So if it costs you $3,000 to live, you should have, or aim to have, at least $9,000 in that contingency fund. And what that fund is used for is things that are unprepared for, right? Things that you are unexpected, i.e., flat tire.
Mm.
Somebody said today, one of my clients today said the whole front end shock something another has to be replaced that she didn't plan for, but we have been working on her contingency fund. So she had $3,000 already set aside. So it's not going to take her off of her other financial plan, right? So just having funds set aside, and you want to have it somewhere that is easily accessible, right? So these funds wouldn't typically be in a long-term type of investment. You would have it ideally in a high interest savings account. Depending on who you bank with, I usually recommend the banks the online banks that don't particularly have buildings. So it can be like President's Choice, Tangerine. My new favorite is EQ Bank. These banks offer they don't offer, I wouldn't call them high, but they offer higher interest money on your savings. High could be like 1.5%, 2%. So that's where you want to keep those funds, because they're easily accessible, whether you need to just transfer it to yourself, email it to yourself, to take care of whatever that unexpected expense is, right? You want to have it ideally in an account that is separate from where you do your day-to-day banking, you do to your day-to-day bill payments, anything like that. It's on its own, and you contribute to it, you build it separately. So you save in it outside of your day-to-day stuff, okay? The next pillar, we can hold a whole webinar on this. As you know, as a mortgage broker, I teach a lot about credit and debt, because it is one of the pillars in getting approved for a mortgage. A lender is looking at, your ability to repay your debt. It's looking at your relationship with money. But what we don't teach about credit and debt is that credit has a purpose, right? Credit has a purpose. It's actually a leveraging tool, if used correctly, that you can use to build wealth. But what has happened, right, is that we're sold the credit story that the more credit we have, the better our credit score is. It's almost like the better we are as people, right? And so when the bank is saying, oh, we've pre-approved you for a limit increase, we get excited, we accept it. And then when those unexpected expenses occur, we end up having to use credit to cover them, right? So then we have a lot of debt, right? And so just to give you some stats, right? Our country is like really, well, not our country, but a large portion of our country is inundated with debt, right? As soon as our kids finish school, what do we have? Student loans. I remember when I first started college, it was the first week, orientation week. We hadn't had any college classes, but what they did have were tables and tables of different credit card companies in the foyer offering me credit cards with no education, right? So not only are our kids having student loans, but they're now having credit card debt as soon as they turn 18, 19, without any skill set on how to manage credit or debt, right? Canadians owe, on average, $1.71 for every disposable dollar of income that they own. So that means for every dollar that they earn, they owe, well, it says 81 cents, right? That means people are living above their means. They're using credit as an extension of their income. Right? Remember I said earlier that income is really what the challenge is. There's not enough income. So when these lenders are offering you credit increases, they're not doing it for you. They're doing it for themselves. Okay?
That is true.
Yes. So our goal, right, in making sure that your house is solid is to make a plan to be debt free of consumer debt. And so when I say consumer debt, it's the Visas, the MasterCards, the store cards. Most people need a car and they have a vehicle, they may have a car loan, but having a shorter term car loan, I've been encountering some car loans that are like 8 years long, and I'm just like, whoa, with $700 and $800 payments, right? And if you do the math, that's a whole lot of money, right? So the goal is to really be free of consumer debt. And I'm not saying you can't use your credit, but there should be a strategy in place, right? You're only using credit to, let's say, earn points, earn reward dollars, things that you can actually benefit from, but you're not, the goal is to not be carrying debt on a month to month basis, because as you'll see in the next slide, the longer you carry debt, the more the bank is making money off of you, and that's taking away from your ability to build wealth. All right. So how can you make a plan to be consumer debt free? Once, you got to know where all your debts are, like how much debt you have, who do you owe, and how much are you paying in interest. All right, because you got to create a strategy in order to get rid of your debt. You need to review your budget and set a payment time frame that is reasonable and affordable, right? If you don't operate off of a budget, I highly encourage you to do that. Knowing exactly how much money is coming in, how much money is going out, and where it's going is key in securing your financial house, right? Because again, your money needs to be put in places that it's going to give you a rate of return versus any institution. All right. Decide which debt needs to be paid off first, such as high interest debts or low balance debt. So there's two methods out there in which you can choose to use to pay off your debt. The avalanche method is the method that focuses on the highest interest that you are paying. So if you have 3 different credit cards, one, the interest rate is 21.99, one is 19.99, and the other could be 11.99. Your goal would be to maintain all of the minimum payments on each of those accounts, the minimum that's required, but any extra income that you can load onto the debt that's charging you 21.99, you would do that. So let's say the minimum payment on each account is $100, but you have an extra $100 that you can, take from your short-term savings to put it on your credit card debt. So for the first debt, which is 21.99, you would pay $200 a month on that debt, and then continue to pay $100 on the other debt, because of course you want to maintain your credit. Credit has a purpose, but we just have to make sure we're using it correctly, right? And so every extra dollar that you would focus on paying down that higher interest debt until that debt is completely paid off. And then you would be left with 2 debts. So then you would then use the funds that you were paying on that highest interest and roll it over to the next highest, which would be the one that was charging you 19.99. And once you completed paying off that one, then again, you would roll now those two bulks of money onto the third debt. And so that would be one strategy. So you're going from the highest to the lowest until you've eliminated all of that debt. The snowball effect works in the reverse. And it's usually the one that I recommend to clients, mainly because most people who are in debt because they're emotional spenders. And so with the snowball effect, it tackles your psychological aspect of spending, right? So if you now have the same 3 debts, all of the debt minimum payments are $100, and you have that extra $100, you would then take that extra 100 and put it on the smallest debt, the smallest amount, right? Because let's say the balance is smallest, until that debt is paid off, right? Which would happen a lot sooner, right? Because you're making a larger payment, the interest rate is a lot lower, the balance therefore is going to reduce a lot quicker, right? Because more of your payment is going towards the debt versus the interest portion. Once you complete paying that one, you take those same funds and roll it onto the next one, right? And so the quicker you are able to pay the debt, the more you feel accomplished and the more committed you could be to the process. All right, so those are the 2 different ways that you can strategize to pay off your debts. In the process, I know somebody mentioned about, having collection calls, which again, that's something that would still need to be paid. What you can do is always try to have conversations with your creditors. right? And see where you can save on interest costs, see where you can save on amounts owing. I always encourage to have a conversation. It doesn't always work because it depends on who you get, but wherever you can you can access savings, I do encourage it in order to help you to pay off the debt a lot quicker. All right. And this says close off any debts, but it's something that I don't typically encourage, especially if you are planning to purchase a home. We're not going to talk a whole lot about credit, but when you have credit history is something that is one of the key components to showing your credit relationship, right? And so if you have old accounts, unless it's it's let's say I don't know, extremely high, like maybe a store card or something, there has to be some form of situation, then I would say, close the account. But if you have a long time history, you don't want to close accounts, particularly because it shortens your credit history and that could affect your overall credit. But if it's anything like in terms of collections, you want to make sure that they're paid off, and then we can also ensure that the information has been updated accordingly so that it reflects correctly on your credit bureau. All right, the next pillar, which we talk about, you cannot save your way to wealth. All right, savings and investments. And so again, this is something that we're never really taught of. There's different ways in which you can there's different ways in which you can invest your money. We won't go into all of that. Of course, I'm pro real estate. I believe that that is the most secure way that you can grow your money, because it's an actual tangible thing that you can see, touch, feel, smell, pass on to your children. But again, there's various ways that you can invest in order for your money to grow. But investing is definitely the key to building wealth. I saw this on Instagram earlier this week and I was like, oh wow, this is a great example. So to save your way to $1 million over 40 years, you'd need to contribute $990,000. All right. To invest your way to $1 million over 40 years, you'd need to contribute $137,000. Does anyone notice a difference?
Yeah, the second one is doable.
Right? Over the course of 40 years, if you think about it, right?
Yeah,
Why $1
absolutely.
million? Why I thought this was fitting, because most people don't really know how much they will need for retirement. And on average, the average Canadian will need approximately 1.3, 1.4 million in assets in order to maintain their lifestyle by retirement. So I thought, oh, this is a great number, a great example. There is a saying that was created by, or a quote, let me say a quote, by Albert Einstein that says, compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. He who understands it earns it. He who doesn't pays it. Can anyone give me their interpretation of what they think this means or what it's referring to?
I'm thinking the compound interest is the eighth wonder. Okay, he who understands it earns it. So you can make it work for you, I suppose, if you put, I don't know, like you're saying property, but maybe mutual funds or RSPs, I don't know. But if you could find a way to invest it and let the compound interest be yours versus paying it out, I think that's what this is saying. I'm not sure though.
Yeah, you're right on. You're right on it. Making the compound interest. I mean, and once you invest your money, what it is anywhere you invest your money, whether it be in a stock, in mutual fund, in segregated funds, in a GIC, all of that money is invested in the markets. And so what that means is you put $100 every month. You put $100 this month. You put $100 next month, but you're earning, let's say, the 3% on your money. This month, if you earn 3%, your $100 becomes $103. Next month, that $103 gets reinvested, right?
Oh.
So it's not just $100, it's the growth that's actually being reinvested into, and that's what allows your money to grow. Which is why, if you compare these two, same time frame, right? Different return, but the contribution would be the same. It's just it's invested in two different vehicles, right? So if you're investing it, it's invested in the markets where it's allowed to grow compoundly. And if it's saving, that means it's in a bank account and the bank is basically just blowing wind on it. Okay? So this falls under what's called the rule of 72. Have you ladies heard about the rule of 72?
Yes.
You have, Allison?
Yes.
This is the bank secret. Okay? The rule of 72 will provide an estimate on the number of years your money will double with respect to the interest rate. So the formula is 72 divided by the interest rate that you receive, which will equal the number of years your money will double. All right? So in this example, it gives you $10,000 at 1% divided by 72 is going to take 72 years for your $10,000 to become $20,000. Y'all got 72 years? The answer is no. You guys don't have 72 years.
No.
Right? No, definitely not. And so that's typically, if you think about the traditional savings, right? So even when I said, you know, your emergency fund should be kept in a fund that's accessible, that's only because you need it, right? And so you don't want to have to pay fees to access your money if it's actually invested in the markets. The bank tells you they'll give you, you know, if they tell you 1%, you're lucky, right? But then if you think about the cost of inflation, right? Or the rate of inflation right now, where we're almost at 6%, if you have money that is in the bank, you're actually in the negative, right? Because their bank is only giving you 1%, but your money is actually declining because of the value of it. This is where this is where the differentiation between saving versus investing. Okay. So here's an example, right? So if you have your money invested, let's say that same $10,000 in a vehicle that's going to give you 12%, it would take 6 years for your money to become 20,000. All right. Versus it being invested in being given 2%, it would take 36 years. We don't have time for that, right? We want our money working for us. All right. Oh, let me go back to this and just to elaborate on the rule of 72. If you had that same $10,000 in a savings account and the bank is offering you 2%, which is what they probably would, right? And you go to the bank and they say, well, congratulations, Miss Henry, you've been pre-approved for a credit card of $10,000, right? You accept the $10,000. What is the interest rate that they would be charging you?
22.
Anywhere between 19 and 22. The truth
Yep.
is that $10,000 that you have saved, they've now re-advanced it to you on a credit card.
Yep.
All right. So whose money is going to grow faster? Yours or the bank's?
Theirs. So sucky.
Right. The rule of 72. This is what they don't want us to know. So when you're saving your monies, I want you to think about these three. I mean, you can save in multiple ways, but as I said, just keeping things simple. I like the 3-bucket system. One we talked about already, the contingency fund. So that is going to be your savings that is set aside for any unexpected expenses, things that you can't plan for, or even just to have a cushion close by in case you want to do something, right? Then you also want to have a short-term fund. And this is where you would save your money for things like a vacation, or, you know, if you're planning to buy a home, you want to save your down payment. This would be in an investment fund that is more aggressive, and it's because it's being circulated in the market. So you'll get a higher rate of return offer, but there's also typically rules where it's not accessible right away. So you're locking it in for a period of time in order for it to work much faster versus being in an easily accessible cash account like a savings account. Okay. And then your retirement. Again, as I said, most people don't think about what they need for retirement, but that's where the government had implemented the RRSPs for long term. But again, people don't really strategize and know how much they should be investing in an RSP. I myself Encourage RSP only if you are planning to purchase a house. I don't think it's the best way to invest your money. There's different ways that you can invest your money and still yield a much higher rate of return for the same purpose of retirement. But for keeping things simple, you want to have these 3 savings buckets, and you determine where and what institutions and what vehicles that you're going to save them in. Okay? Any questions? All right.
No, not for me.
Quick question is, most people are like, well, how do I do that, Siobhan? How do I set up my savings buckets? How do I get started? What do I do? Right? I like to keep things simple. Money and finance can be a very complex thing, can become very overwhelming, especially if you're not fully versed in it and educated. Keep it very, very simple. So I like this 50-30-20 method. And so this method says 50% of your income, your net income, so after tax dollars, should be delegated for your needs, right? And it doesn't have to be static. It doesn't have to be 50. I try to, let's try to work on less, but for argument's sake, 50%. So that's going to cover your housing, your transportation, your insurance, groceries, if you do pay for healthcare, and utilities. So anything above that, this is where you have to start making adjustments. You want to bring it back to 50%. 30% here says goes towards your wants. But if you work with me, we flip this. We do 30% for the financial future, and we do 20% for wants. Okay? But that's for your casual stuff, like you eating out, entertainment, just anything that makes you comfortable, right, in terms of lifestyle. And then the 20% is for obviously your savings and if paying off debt. And until you pay off, once you pay off your debt, then you increase your savings. Okay? Remember I said earlier about paying, you're tied that 20%. And why I say 30? Because 10 goes to the Lord, right? And so you want to make sure that you have your 20% to do, if you have debt, to pay off your debt and focus on your savings as well. Okay? There's various different budgeting templates, ideas, or strategies that you can use. But as I said, I like to keep things simple for those who aren't very savvy and just want to get started. And so once you've mastered this, then you can refine and adjust accordingly. Okay? All right. So here we are. The 4 pillars to building your financial house. We covered income protection, making sure that you have your life insurance, you have your income, your wishes written. You also have delegated someone who would be responsible for not only your children but also for anything that you need in terms of medical treatment or anything like that. Always have your stuff in writing, and whomever you've assigned, let them know that they've been assigned. Conversation. You'd be surprised. Sometimes people don't really have that conversation, but let them know. Then your emergency fund, your contingency fund is, anywhere between 3 to 6 months of your annual or your monthly salary, your monthly expenses, sorry. How much does it cost to be you? If you don't know what that is, then I do encourage you to print off the last 3 months of your banking statements and your credit card statements and itemize where everything has come and gone. All right? You got to know exactly how much it costs you to be you every single month, and therefore you can plan accordingly. And then if you have debt, of course, we want to figure out what strategy you're going to use or implement in order to eliminate the debt. If you don't have a lot of debt, that's great. If you do, even if it's a little bit of debt, we don't want to carry debt, right? You want to leverage credit for what it is and make sure that there's some benefit for you to use it. Ultimately, what I do encourage clients is once you find a card or a product that you can use that's going to give you, like I think there's PC points, you can get your groceries and stuff like that. If you have a card like that you can use, I would encourage you to use your credit card as if it's your debit card, which means you're only buying things that you have the money for, so that you're leveraging the system. right? You're using your card, you're buying gas, you're buying groceries, but you're also getting rewards, but you're not carrying a balance because you're buying things that you have the money for. Okay? And then, of course, savings and investing. Savings, you want to make sure that you have your 3 buckets: one for your emergency fund, one for your short-term goals, whether that's home ownership, vacations, if it's planning to purchase a car, back to school shopping, anything like that, you want to save in a short-term account. And then, of course, long-term, meaning planning for retirement, knowing that you have your money, preparing for retirement. If you have a pension, great. If you don't have a pension, you definitely want to implement something that you can, help to supplement that income. But also, you want to make sure if you do have a pension that it's going to be adequate. Okay, so that you may not need to top up, or if you need to know if you need to top up. Okay, and so my closing thought is to remind you that building wealth is a marathon, not a sprint. And financial discipline is what the key ingredient to making that happen. So accessing information, webinars like this will help you to move one step further in securing your financial house, which will help you ultimately be able to strategize and implement things that will help you and your family to build the legacy that you would like. All right, and I have an offer for the GTA single moms. I recently launched a coaching program for my mom community where we are working through, and I'm working with you hands-on to get your financial house in order and get you on the right track. And so we will go through, as I mentioned, your financial house. So going through everything that we went through and making sure if you don't have something, I make recommendations or suggestions. Credit is something, again, that many people, they learned in the later part of life how important it is, because we know that we need credit for just about everything: cell phones, utilities. So using it the right way to help you is very, very key. So we can go over your credit and see how you can improve, or how you want to go ahead and work on paying off your debt. And then your savings and investment strategy, we got to figure out where you are currently, and then we put something in place based off of where you are financially now, and put in a strategy in place, and so that you can help move to the next step. And so we do this through 2 coaching calls for the month at 45 minutes. They've typically gone on a lot longer, but they're supposed to be 45 minutes. And it's still in pre-launch mode, so it'll be $147 all inclusive. And so if that's something that you would be interested in, feel free to let me know. I can share my calendar link, and we can schedule a time to have our initial consultation. And so in closing, I just want to say thank you for taking the time to invest in you. Please connect with me on all social. I'm on all social platforms. I am on Instagram mostly. So if you're on Instagram, be sure to follow me at Mortgages for Moms, or at my personal page at I am Siobhan Bent. And that's it.
So Siobhan,